Myself Dr. Minakathan Sahu, Reader, Head and Dean, PG Department of Law, Sambalpur University. The topic on which I will deliver a lecture today, that trial process including cognizance and framing of charges. In this context, I would like to highlight the learning outcomes of this particular module. The first one is conceptual analysis on cognizance of offence and loss related to it. Next, basic rule regarding charge and alteration of charge under the Code of Criminal Procedure. And the third one is understanding the trial process both in warrant case and summons case. And the fourth one, that is case laws pertaining to cognizance, framing of charge and trial process. Before explaining the legal provisions with regard to the trial process including cognizance and framing of charges, here I would like to introduce the topic. The law of criminal procedure is intended to provide a mechanism for the enforcement of criminal law. Without proper procedural law, the substantive law which defines offences and provides punishments for them would be almost worthless. Thus, the law of criminal procedure is meant to be complementary to the criminal law and has been designed to look after the process of its administration. In view of this objective, the law of criminal procedure creates the necessary machinery for the detection of crime, arrest of suspected criminals, collection of evidence, determination of guilt or innocence of the accused person, and the imposition of proper punishment on the guilty person. Trial process including framing of charge and taking cognizance are some of the important aspects of criminal justice administration system in India. Hence, it is indispensable for a student of criminal law to understand the important segments like cognizance, charge and trial process. Therefore, this particular lecture will provide a brief insight on the aspects of the trial process including cognizance and framing of charge under the Code of Criminal Procedure. So, for the topic is concerned, it is pertinent to describe and should have the fundamental idea on the concept cognizance. So, for the meaning of cognizance of offence is concerned, cognizance literally means knowledge or notice, and taking cognizance of offence means taking notice or becoming aware of the alleged commission of offence. While plain and dictionary meaning thereof is taking note of, taking account of, to know about, to gain knowledge about, awareness about certain things, etc. But in law, the common understanding of the term cognizance is taking judicial notice by a court of law, possessing jurisdiction or a cause of matter presented before it so as to decide whether there is any basis for initiating proceedings and determination of the case or matter judicially. So, legal sense of taking judicial notice by a court of law or a magistrate is altogether different from the view and the ideal layman for it. So, in this context, I would like to highlight a leading case, R.R. Chari versus State of UP, AR 1951, Supreme Court, page number 207. In this particular case, the Honorable Supreme Court of India held that taking cognizance does not involve any formal action or indeed action of any kind, but occurs as soon as a magistrate as such applies his mind to the suspected commission of offence. So, here question arises actually when cognizance taken and what are the provisions of law for taking the cognizance under the Code of Criminal Procedure. A magistrate may take cognizance of any offence, and the provisions relating to cognizance deals with section 191 to 194 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. A magistrate may take the cognizance of any offence, the first, upon receiving a complaint of fact which constitutes such offence; number 2, upon a police report of such offence; number 3, upon information received from any person other than a police officer or upon his own knowledge that such offence has been committed. Therefore, taking cognizance by the Honorable Court is something different from the cognizable offence or the cognizable case. So, for the Code of Criminal Procedure is concerned, the cognizable offence means an offence where the police can arrest a person without warrant, and the non-cognizable offence means a offence for which the police cannot arrest a person without a warrant. Therefore, taking cognizance and cognizable offence is something different. So, for the provisions of law is concerned under the Code of Criminal Procedure, the Honorable Court specifically take the cognizance by the judicial magistrate after due compliance of the provisions of law prescribed under the CRPC. Specifically, Chapter 14th of the Code of Criminal Procedure under the caption, the conditions requisite for initiation of proceedings employs a word cognizance, and the very first section in the said chapter, that is section 190, outlines as how to take the cognizance of offence by the magistrate of an offence and a complaint on a police report or upon information of a person other than a police officer. So, for the section 191 to 194 of the CRPC is concerned, the magistrate is empowered to take the cognizance, but here question arises, can cognizance be taken by the court of session? So, for the section 193 of CRPC is concerned, cognizance taken by the sessions court is permissible, but under certain circumstances, specifically section 193 CRPC says that no court of session shall take cognizance of any offence as a court of original jurisdiction unless the case has been committed to it by a magistrate under this code. This means cognizance can be taken by court of session only on commitment of a case by a magistrate. The idea is that a court of session is not required to perform all the preliminary formalities which magistrates have to do until the case is committed to the court of session. However, the court of session may take cognizance without commitment by magistrate, if so expressly provided by this code or by any other law for the timing in force. In this context, an example can be cited that a court of session is specified to conduct a trial and no other court can conduct the trial of offences under the Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. Specifically, the trial in such a case can be conducted only in the matter provided. What I mean to say, cognizance by the court of session is permissible, but there are certain exceptions. If there is express provision under the code, or if the special court under the Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Act of 1989, which permits specifically to the special court for taking the cognizance, then it is permissible. If not, it must be, due committance by the judicial magistrate to the court of session, then the cognizance can be taken. In this context, I would like to highlight a case, leading case, that is M.A. Kutappan versus E. Krishnan Nayanar AIR 2004, page number Supreme Court 2825. In the facts and circumstances of the case, the commission of an offence under section 3(1)(x) of the SC and ST Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989 and under section 7(1)(d) of the Protection of Civil Rights Act was found to have been made out. Special judge took the cognizance of the offence and issued a process summoning respondent number 1 to stand trial. The order of the special judge was challenged by respondent number 1 before the High Court, which by its impugned order passed the order of the special judge taking cognizance, finding that no offence was made out under either of the two acts. Aggrieved by the judgment and order of the High Court, the appellant preferred this appeal by special leave before the apex court on behalf of the respondent number 1. It was submitted that the court of special judge constituted under 1989 Act had no jurisdiction to entertain the complaint, take cognizance and issue process against the respondent number 1. Relying upon the decisions of this court, it was submitted that the special judge constituted for the trial of the offences under the aforesaid 1989 Act could only exercise the powers of the Sessions Court in accordance with the procedures laid down under the Code of Criminal Procedure. It was submitted that unless an order of the committal was made by a competent magistrate committing the accused to stand trial before the court of session, the Sessions judge had no jurisdiction to try the offence under the aforesaid act. Court of session had no jurisdiction even to entertain a complaint made before it under the aforesaid act. At the same time, another case law is Gangula Ashok versus State of Andhra Pradesh 2000, 2 SCC 504 and Vidyadharan versus State of Kerala, JT 2003, 9 SC 89. Can be taken into consideration. In this particular case, the apex court came to conclusion that the impugned order of the special judge deserved to be set aside so far as it related to the taking cognizance of the offence under the Act 1989 and issuing process on the basis of the complaint directly made before it by the complainant. So, it can be said that section 193 CRPC imposes an interdict on all courts of session against taking cognizance of any offence as a court of original jurisdiction. Court of session can take cognizance only if the case has been committed to it by a magistrate as provided in the code. So, also the very landmark judgment that can be cited here in Dharampal and others versus State of Haryana and another, the judgment was pronounced in July 18, 2013. The case is related that here question arises. In this case it was argued that whether under section 209 the magistrate was required to take cognizance of the offence before committing the case to the court of session or not. It is well settled that cognizance of an offence can only be taken once. In the event magistrate takes the cognizance of the offence and then commits the case to the court of session, the question of taking fresh cognizance of the offence and thereafter proceed to issue summons is not in accordance with law. If cognizance is to be taken of the offence, it could be taken either by the magistrate or the court of session. The language of the section 193 of the code very clearly indicates that once the case is committed to the court of session by the learned magistrate, the court of session assumes original jurisdiction and all that goes with the assumption of such jurisdiction. The provisions of section 209 will therefore have to be understood as the learned magistrate playing a passive role in committing the case to the court of session on finding from the police report that the case was triable by the court of session, nor can there be any question of a part cognizance being taken by the magistrate and part cognizance being taken by the learned session judge. So, also the another leading case, that is Kishan Singh versus State of Bihar. Here it is the court lays down the law correctly in respect of the powers of the session court after committal of the case to it by the learned magistrate under section 209 of CRPC. So, for the taking cognizance, time limitations has been prescribed under the Code of Criminal Procedure. The time limitation that says a magistrate can take cognizance of the offence only within the time limits prescribed by law for this purpose, which deals with section 467 to 473 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. After taking the cognizance, the next process is issue of process. According to section 204 of CRPC 1973, if the magistrate taking cognizance of offence consider that there is a sufficient ground for proceeding, he shall issue process against the accused person in the following manner. First, if the case appears to be a summons case, he shall issue a summons for his attendance of the accused. If the case appears to be a warrant case, he may issue a warrant, or if he thinks fit, summons for the causing accused to be brought or to appear at a certain time before such magistrate. Or he can also, if he has no jurisdiction, he can transfer the case to other magistrate. So, section 207 CRPC provides that the magistrate is required to furnish to the accused the copies of the statements, documents and police reports. After completion of the above proceedings, the magistrate shall proceed with the trial of the case by fixing the dates. So, the next concept of this lecture is that is charge. So, for the charge is concerned, here question arises what is meant by charge. Before that, I would like to say that one basic requirement of a fair trial in criminal jurisprudence is to give precise information to the accused as to the accusation against him. This is vitally important to the accused, specifically to defend him and for preparation of his defense. In all trials under the Criminal Procedure Code, the accused is informed of the accusation in the beginning itself. In case of serious offences, the code requires that the accusation are to be formulated and reduced to writing with great precision and clarity. This charge is then to be read and explained to the accused person. A charge simply means an accusation. For the purpose of trial procedures under the code, it signifies a formal accusation in writing against a person that the accused has committed an offence. The code, however, does not define the charge, but section 2B of CRPC 1973 says that charge includes any head of charge when the charge contains more heads than one. So, a charge is a written notice of the precise and specific accusation against him which an accused is required to meet. It is the first notice to the prisoner of the matter where he is accused, and it must convey to him with sufficient clarity and certainty that the prosecution intends to prove against him. So, in this context, the case law can be cited, that is the V.C. Shukla versus State through CBI 1980 CRLJ 690. Here in this particular case, the court held that charge serves the purpose of notice or intimation to the accused, drawn off according to specific language of law, giving clear and unambiguous or precise notice of the nature of accusation that the accused is called upon to meet in the course of trial. So, for the form and contents of charge is concerned, section 211 to 214 of the CRPC prescribes the provisions for form and contents of the charge. It says that every charge shall state the offence with which the accused is charged. If the law gives the offence any specific name, the offence may be described in the charge by that name only. For instance, if A is accused of murder or extortion, the charge may state that A committed murder or extortion without reference to the definition of those crimes. Then, if the law does not give any specific name, so much of the definition of the offence must be stated as to give the accused notice of the matter with which he is charged. So, also the law and the section of the law against which the offence is to be committed shall be mentioned in the charge. The charge shall contain such particulars as to time and a place of alleged offence and a person, if any, against whom, or the thing, if any, in respect of which it was committed, as a reasonable sufficient to give the accused notice of the matter with which he is charged. So, also in the charge the content should be, if the accused having been previously convicted of any offence is liable by reason of such previous conviction to enhanced punishment or to a punishment of different crime for a subsequent offence, the charge shall state the fact, date and place of the previous conviction. Then the charge shall be written in the language of the court. Section 211 and section 212 specifies about contents of charge and mentioning of particulars as to time and place of the alleged offence in the charge. So, these are the various provisions regarding the form and contents of the charge. Here question arises whether charge can be altered. The answer is yes. Section 216 subsection 1 of CRPC says that any court may alter or add to any charge at any time before judgment is pronounced. The section invests a comprehensive power to remedy the defects in the framing or non-framing of a charge, whether discovered at the initial stage of the trial or at any subsequent stage prior to the judgment. So, this was raised in the leading case Kantilal Chandanlal Mehta versus State of Maharashtra. In this particular case, the Honorable Court held the court gives ample power to the courts to alter or amend a charge, whether by the trial court or by the appellate court, provided that the accused has not to face a charge for a new offence or is not prejudiced either by keeping him in the dark about that charge or in not giving a full opportunity of meeting it and putting forward any defence open to him on the charge finally preferred against him. The same issue was raised in Haryar Chakrabarti versus State of West Bengal, AIR 1954, Supreme Court, page number 266. In this particular case, the court has a very wide power to alter the charge. However, the court is to act judiciously and to exercise the discretion wisely. It should not alter the charge to the prejudice of the accused person. At the same time, in K. Prema S. Rao versus Yadala Srinivas Rao 2003 CRLJ 69, in this particular case, the court held that where a charge under section 306 IPC was not specifically framed by the court, but all facts and ingredients constituting that offence were mentioned in the statement of charges framed under section 498A and section 304B of IPC. So, in this particular case, the Honorable Court held that though the charge was not framed under section 306 of the IPC, but the ingredients or the essential ingredients of section 498A clearly fulfills the criteria, and accordingly the court had framed the charge under section 498A, and accordingly trial was conducted and the accused was convicted under section 498A and section 304B of IPC. And the court held that it is not mandatory for the court to order for a new trial if there is any error in alteration of the charge. Next, the basic rule regarding charge and its trial. Section 218 subsection 1 of CRPC says that for every distinct offence of which any person is accused, there shall be a separate charge, and every such charge shall be tried separately. But there are certain exceptions to this rule. That exceptions are the following. If the accused person desires to be tried together for all the charges, then when a person is accused of more offences than one of the same kind committed within the period of 12 months, when the offences are committed in the course of same transaction, when a person is charged with the offences of criminal breach of trust or criminal misappropriation of property, and where it is doubtful that what offence has been committed by the accused. So also the provisions of CRPC says that persons who may be charged jointly. First, persons accused of the same offence committed in the course of the same transaction. Then meaning of same transaction here says that if the offence which has been committed in course of the same transaction, then the accused persons will be charged jointly. Then persons accused of an offence and persons accused of abatement of or attempt to commit such offence. Then persons accused of more than one offence by the same kind within the meaning of section 219 committed by them jointly within the period of 12 months. Then they will be charged jointly. Then persons accused of different offences committed in the course of the same transaction. So also persons accused of an offence which includes theft, extortion, cheating or criminal misappropriation of property, etc. Persons accused of offences under section 411 and 414 of the IPC, these persons will be charged jointly. Here question is in case of at the time of framing the charge any omission is committed or absence or error in charge is detected, what will be the consequence? So, for the provision of prescribed under the CRPC is concerned, effect of omission to frame or absence of or error in charge, that it will not affect on any trial or any judgment, and there is no error at all. But there are certain exceptions if the omission has been committed to frame the charge or error has been committed in the framing the charge, the accused was in fact misled by such error or omission, it has occasioned a failure of justice, then only it will affect the charge. So, for the case law is concerned in K. Prema S. Rao versus Yadala Srinivasa Rao, the Honorable Apex Court observed that mere omission or defect in framing charge does not disable the criminal court from convicting the accused for the offence which is found to have been proved on the evidence on record. The provisions of section 221 of CRPC take care of such a situation and safeguard the powers of the criminal court to convict an accused for an offence with which he is not charged, although on facts found in evidence he could have been charged for such offence. So, also the Kailas Gir versus V.K. Khare, Food Inspector 1981 CRLJ 1556 MP. In this particular case, the object of section 215 and 464 of CRPC, the Honorable Court held that to prevent failure of justice where there has been only technical breach of rules not going to the root of the case as such, the two sections read together lay down that whatever the irregularity in framing of a charge, it is not fatal unless there is prejudice caused to the accused. So, also in this context a case law can be cited, that is S.S. Raut versus State of Orissa 1991 CRLJ 1595. In this particular case, the object of the charge the Honorable Court held that the object of the charge is to give an accused notice of the matter he is charged with if the necessary information is conveyed to him and no prejudice is caused to him because of the charges, the accused cannot succeed by merely showing that the charges framed were defective. Nor could a conviction recorded on charged under wrong provision be reversed if the accused was informed of the details of the offences committed and thus no prejudice was caused to him. Then the court in this particular case also held that the mere omission to frame a charge or a mere defect in the charge is no ground for setting aside a conviction. At the same time, the court observed procedural laws are designed to subserve the ends of justice and not to frustrate them by mere technicalities. So, to support this particular lecture, I have prepared the flow chart which says trial process of criminal cases in India. If we will go through this particular flow chart, start of the trial process in a criminal case. In criminal case, the process can be started on commission of a non-cognizable case or the commission of a cognizable case. And in case of the commission of a non-cognizable case, that filing of private criminal complaint against the offender before the competent authority and cognizance of the commission of the offence and inquiry by the court, preliminary inquiry by the court, and if a prima facie case made out, summoning of the accused and grant of bail by the court in bailable offence, then the trial of the commission of the offence by the court. But in case of the commission of cognizable offence, the arrest will be made by the police officer without warrant, and on arrest, grant of bail by police is not a matter of right. It is a matter of right only in the bailable offence. And in case of the commission of the cognizable offence, the FIR will be registered by the police, and in case of the refusal of the police to register the FIR, then it can be a complaint case can be filed before the Honorable Court under the provisions which is prescribed under section 200 to 203 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. And after the registration of the FIR registered by the police in a cognizable criminal case, then the investigation by police for collection of evidence and interrogation of statement of the accused and the statement of witnesses will be recorded, and the scientific analysis opinion if required will be taken. Then when the FIR registered by the police in cognizable offence and the accused is apprehending the arrest, then he can file an application for anticipatory bail if arrest apprehended before the Sessions Court, and application before the High Court for anticipatory bail if it is rejected by the Sessions Court. Even he can go for through the SLP, filing the anticipatory bail to get the protection from the arrest before the Supreme Court. Then the second is, if the accused, if deemed proper by the investigations officer, or may be kept in police custody or sent to the judicial custody on the orders. Then application for the bail before the Court of Magistrate or the Court of Sessions, or if the bail rejected, applications for the bail before the Court of Sessions, and rejection from the magistrate, application for bail before the High Court, and the rejection of the bail by the High Court before the Supreme Court can be filed. On completion of the investigation, police concludes that no offence is made out. In that particular situation, case closure report is filed before the magistrate, and at the same time, if the case closure report is filed before the magistrate, the quashing of the petition before the High Court can also be filed. But if after the investigation, on completion of the investigation, police concludes that the case is made out, in that particular case charge be framed or the charge sheet shall be filed before the magistrate, and accordingly the trial will commence and the charge will be framed accordingly, and it will be placed before the trial before the court starts. And the provisions clearly says that evidence by prosecution will be taken, and that says with regard to the examination chief, cross examination and a re-examination, on whom the generally the burden of proof lies on the prosecution in a criminal case. At the same time, evidence by the accused will be taken, if any, and the cross examination of the witness by the prosecution will be conducted by the court. And on hearing of arguments, the cross examination and details the conclusion of evidence, and the oral arguments will be conducted, submission of the memorandum of argument by the advocates, and the judgment will be pronounced at last. The judgment is based on two things, that is acquittal or the conviction, and in case of the conviction, hearing on quantum of sentence will be made by the court, and on the basis of that, appeal to higher courts, that is the Sessions Court or the High Court or the Supreme Court, can be approached by the aggrieved party who has been convicted by the lower court. So, this is the flow chart which deals with the trial procedure, including cognizance. So, if we will go through the provisions of the CRPC, the trial is based on three types of cases: warrant case, summons case and summary trial. The common features of the trial in all three cases above mentioned, the following are the procedures. Number one, framing of charge or a giving of notice to the accused. In this particular case, the State of Bihar versus Ramesh Singh 1977 4 SCC 39, it is held that at the beginning and the initial stage of the trial, the truth, the veracity and effect of the evidence which the prosecutor proposes to adduce are not to be meticulously judged. Even in Union of India versus Prafulla Kumar 1979, it is held that for the purpose of determining whether there is sufficient ground for proceeding against an accused, the court possesses a comparatively wide discretion to determine the question whether the material on record, if unrebutted, is such on which the conviction can be said to be reasonably possible. Then in case of the warrant case, the recording of the prosecution evidence, then prosecution evidence, after recording prosecution evidence, the examination chief will be conducted, and it is the rule that the trial will be conducted in a regular manner with due compliance of the section 309 of the CRPC, which speaks regarding adjournment. They should not have repeated adjournment, and it should be conducted regularly. Then the statement of accused will be recorded, and the defense advocate will be adduced. So, while the defense will be placed before the Honorable Court, it was a question before the Honorable Court in Dinesh Barthakur versus State of Assam in 2008, 5 SCC 697. Here the question was whether distinction between investigation that leads to filing a police report and trial that leads to determination of guilt. In this case, the police report was filed on the basis of the investigation, which includes statement of some prosecution witnesses, service of the sniffer dog and forensic report, but at the same time of trial of the case, it was noticed by the court that prosecution failed to prove the case beyond the reasonable doubt, and the case is based on circumstantial evidence only. The court held that while the services of a sniffer dog may be taken for the purpose of investigation, its faculties cannot be taken as evidence for the purpose of establishing of the guilt of an accused. Then the final judgment will be pronounced. Then the case, even there are certain provisions under the CRPC which speaks regarding compoundable offences. There are 21 compoundable offences prescribed under the CRPC, and 36 non-compoundable offences has been prescribed in the schedule. And after the final judgment, if the accused, on the basis of the previous conviction or on the basis of the criminal antecedents of the accused, the court may admonish as per the section 360 of the CRPC or under the provisions of the Probation of Offenders Act 1958, and accordingly he may be released. But here it is also pertinent to mention the summary trials. In this particular trial, magistrates competent to try and the procedure to be adopted as per the provisions of law, and the sentence and judgment will be pronounced, evidence will be recorded, and acquittal of the accused in warrant cases and the oral charge. Because in summary trial, there is no formal procedure for the framing of the charge. Then the final order should show whether accused has been discharged or acquitted. Then the double jeopardy. This means when an accused is convicted tried and they convicted, again he cannot be tried or convicted for the same offense or for the same cause of action. I would like to summarize that the trial process, including cognizance and framing of charges, specifically with due compliance of the provisions of the CRPC, the effect of the charge, the omission of the charge and the error committed in the charge, it will decide the case. At the same time, to determine the guilt or the innocence of the accused who has committed a heinous crimes and he is to be prosecuted with due compliance of the provisions of the CRPC, and it is a cardinal principles of criminal law that every accused should be prosecuted in exercise, and he should not be deprived of his basic right of fair trial and speedy and expeditious trial as prescribed and enunciated under the Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which clearly speaks that no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except according to procedural statutory law. So, the criminal procedure clearly prescribes the mechanism for the trial process, taking cognizance, framing of charges for the trial of the accused who has committed a criminal case or who has committed a crime and should be punished as per the law. That's all. Thank you.